Zapia to host instead of me. Good to see you, Joe.
Thank goodness. Finally, we brought in a professional.
And
That's what we're looking at. Oh, look at that. Fantasy football is stupid. You wore that just for me. I
just
see.
For you. Just for you. And of course,
there.
we also have Enosaurus. Look, going from DVR to Eno. We're all spoiled here. Good to see you, Eno.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. So, Joe, take it away.
Well, first of all, great cause. I'm very happy to be a part of this again for the last few years and raising money for ALS. Just a wonderful job by you, Nick Pollock, and everybody volunteering their time and everybody donating. So fantastic stuff. And I love that you give opportunities to new people in the industry like this fellow here, Enosaurus, I believe it's pronounced. It's nice that he gets an opportunity and a platform. I love how you just pluck these kids out there who are just, so excited for baseball.
I used to be a hungry kid once.
That's right. And a hungry kid again. Of course I kid. Yes, Eno is back. I see everybody in the chat is very excited to see you. Less so, of course, for me. And of course, they're stuck with Nick the entire time. So they're kind of stuck there. So today we're going to have a little fun. We're going to talk a little pitching. We're going to talk some pitching ADPs. I'm going to throw some names that are right next to each other in ADP. And I'm going to have the boys battle it out. And of course, as a tiebreaker, we can throw it to the comments section. If you want to chime in there, we're certainly listening. If you want to let me be the end all be all, we can do that as well. But it's really to have some fun, to talk about some of these names. And I want to start off with two guys right now in terms of ADP that are pretty close to each other. I'm using the consensus ADP from Fantasy Pros where I work, which is a nice way to kind of get that aggregate all around from different organizations, different places, the Yahoos. I know ESPN just opened up. We got a lot of other consensuses in there as well, CBS, et cetera, et cetera. So let's start with two guys. Checkered history for Jacob deGrom. Right now, he is going as the fifth pitcher overall, number 26 overall in ADP. Shane McClanahan right after him of the Tampa Bay Rays at 28. So 5 and 6 respectively. McClanahan dealt with some injuries last year. Obviously, we know about that. deGrom, well, we certainly know about his limitations, but certainly that didn't stop Texas from signing him to a huge contract. So, let's start with you because Nick Pollock is exhausted from talking, I'm sure, for the last 7 hours. Let's talk about these two guys because they are obviously two big-time names. They both come with a little bit of risk, but they come with huge upside. Regardless of whether or not you want to draft these two, which of these two would you recommend to other people as a good investment?
Yeah, the auction calculator says that Jacob deGrom is the best the pitcher in baseball, fantasy pitcher in baseball. That's the auction calculator on Fangraphs with 160 innings. So that's the number he has to hit. Will he hit that number?
Nick Pollock's making faces about that 160 you just threw out. I just want you to know.
I mean, you have to prorate out that 2020 season to really feel good about him having done that at all in the last 3 seasons. I think he's much more likely to put up maybe 120 innings. And that makes me think he's a little bit more like a Kershaw. And Kershaw keeps doing it. It is weird. Kershaw was a top 20 pitcher in fantasy baseball last year, and he did not throw very much. But I have to think that in a lot of the formats, you must have lost some of those starts from Kershaw. He was pitching every 6 days that late in the season. They're a pain to manage, is what I'm saying. There's got to be some dollar figure you lose just to the management, the ulcers you get, the oh my God, he's got elbow soreness. No, like that's a minus some figure somewhere. So I just happen to probably not have any shares of Jake deGrom this year. He's going at the turn. It's not a place I want to take that much risk on. Shane McClanahan goes later, and Shane McClanahan, I don't know if he has Jake deGrom type upside, but he has a lot of upside. This guy's an ace. He's a really, really good pitcher. And I know it didn't end amazingly well with that shoulder impingement, but he came back out there and he pitched well after it. And I think he is an ace. I think he's got 3 pitches command. They're all good. And I would rather have Shane McClanahan, especially if you throw a little bit of ADP my way.
All right. So obviously Team Shane for Eno makes a lot of sense. Now, deGrom did get quite a few years from the Texas Rangers. So obviously they did their homework on the arm and all this stuff going through. And I think a lot of last year you could also probably chalk up to deGrom knowing that, hey, you know, I can't go out there and overextend myself and get hurt with this last big contract looming. Now that the contract is there, do we have a situation where he is more apt to go out there and pitch through situations? I know it's kind of a hypothetical in a lot of those spots here, Nick. And the impingement, the shoulder impingement, sometimes that's also a precursor to other injuries. We've seen guys have that before where they come out as like, oh no, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. The next year, he's not around anymore. So both these guys, they're not in my top 10 because I'm really tough on guys with injuries right now in the starting pitching world. So you tell me, Nick, of these two, Shane McClanahan, Jacob deGrom, which would you prefer to make an investment in 23?
I totally understand that you just want to avoid all of it. That's totally fine when you have as many good starting pitchers to choose from this year. The problem is that pitching is really hard to do for a long time without getting hurt. And there are going to be injury question marks. Sure, they just pitched a lot last year, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be fine this year too. And so I try to, I it's hard to balance it, and it blends together a lot. But Jacob deGrom, there's no way I'm doing that. It's just, I mean, as is talking about, like, we play this because we want to have fun. We want to enjoy ourselves. And it is not fun having a pitcher or a player. I mean, I will never touch Byron Buxton because it's just an absolute heart attack every single day. Like, is this the day that it's going to happen? Right. I already deal with anxiety. I don't need more of that. Jacob deGrom is absurdly good, though. I mean, we just revealed PLV, and his for 2021 sliders was like the greatest thing in the world. And the problem
he's like the basis of Stuff Plus, like
yeah, right. It's just
it's like, there's anything that's like a deGrom slider is really good. Oh, I wonder why that is.
Yeah, right. I think normally we get really excited if it's over 5 for us. Really a 5.5. I think it was 6.5 for deGrom in 2021, which is just so far and away, like you don't see that. But with McClanahan, what's interesting to me, the shoulder impingement stuff you're talking about, I think that did lead to the neck injury that he had about 2 weeks after or so, because I think it was compensating a little bit. And the Rays did the right thing by slowing him down and really gradually getting him up. They're like, all right, it's the playoffs. Let's see how you're doing. And he was amazing. I mean, the last game he pitched, he had an amazing fastball. He scored 99 in the playoffs. I feel a little bit safer about McClanahan this year than I was thinking I would be. That said, it is still the Rays. And I think the Rays are going to be a little careful, just a touch, with McClanahan than they were this time last year. And because they really pushed them last year. I mean, McClanahan was going 6-7 innings at times with the Rays, which we didn't really know was going to happen. I remember searching for it like on the weekend underneath the bleachers in the middle of 2021. And McClanahan has one weakness, surprisingly still, it's against lefties. His four-seamer doesn't perform well, but he doesn't command it well. The slider actually command is not good in the middle of the zone. Against lefties, and the changeup that he introduced was just against righties, and it's so good against righties, but then against lefties he doesn't throw it, and he's still looking for one more thing. I suggested that it'd be a sinker just because you got to throw something that is jamming them inside in some way to make his four-seamer better. That's kind of crazy to say because he was 2.54 ERA last year, if I remember correctly. I mean, the guy is a stud.
It seems like he has good breaking balls. You'd think he'd be good against lefties.
So, like, this should work. It could just be as simple as, hey, the four-seamer's landing in the middle of the zone too much. Just get it up more against lefties and you're set. And normally we see the reverse where you see the four-seamer do better against same-handedness. I mean, it just makes sense. You don't want, the ball's not coming into you. It's coming from behind you. It's way harder to hit as a hitter. So it could be a better season for McClanahan this year. So I'm clearly going to take him over deGrom. I mean, deGrom, 100 innings maybe. I don't know, 120.
To me, it's absurd.
And you can make a case that the smaller league you get, the better deGrom is because the replacement value goes up.
Sure.
And that's something to consider. If you're in a 10-team league, I might be more inclined to just say, you know what, screw it. I need to have a deGrom-esque season to win that and to really separate from the pack more. While in my 15-teamers and such, I'm like, I just can't throw away my season like that. I can't just roll the dice on this. Even though the replacement,
you don't have to sell me. I'm a self-loathing Met fan. I've watched enough Jacob deGrom on the sidelines to know the heartache of this situation. And it's difficult because what's tantalizing, he is arguably the best pitcher in baseball. What's interesting is Shane McClanahan was arguably the best pitcher in baseball for the first half of last year. 1.71 ERA, 10-3 over 110 innings. The last 55 innings, obviously not as good. ERA over 4 in those. So we can talk about the injury. We can also talk about how good that run is and how unsustainable that was. So maybe we'll see what happens there. But both of these guys, very high draft picks. Good to get your thoughts on these guys. Make it 3 for 3 on McClanahan, by the way, just for the record. And of course, if you're watching, drop your comments in the chat. We want to know who you vote for too. So if you're voting for McClanahan, if you got a case for DeGrom and it's a good one, maybe we'll bring up your point there. We always like to hear from the peanut gallery. Let's talk about some other pitchers here that we've got here. I want to talk about 2 teammates right here for the Toronto Blue Jays. The 17th pitcher overall, Alek Manoah, against the 18th overall pitcher, Kevin Gausman. Now, both these guys I'm perfectly fine with having. There's a part of me that just, likes having Alek Manoah on my team just in case anyone else wants to mess with my team. I'd like to have a big hoss like that around just to kind of knock somebody down, just in case somebody gets out of line. It's nice to have that kind of guy on your roster, and he is a hoss. Make no doubt about it. Love this dude. But Gausman, obviously, some people wrote him off. Well, he's not going to be able to do the same thing he did when he left San Francisco. They've been wrong. I'm not going to point fingers at you, Nick Pollock, but we'll see how you feel about this. So let's talk about Kevin Gausman and Alek Manoah, pair of teammates going back-to-back here in ADP in terms of the starting pitchers. Who would you rather have for 2023?
So, okay. It's really, really difficult. And there are a lot of easy ways to do this of just saying, look, Kevin Gausman had a 363 BABIP, and we all know it's not going to be that again, right? I mean, that was essentially historic, and we feel like that's got to fall down. But the question I have is how much? And there are a lot of times that people say, oh, it's because of the home park. It's because of the defense. But then you look over at Manoah, who had about a 240 BABIP, and I'm like, wait a second. There's no way that it's just that. That's his teammate doing this, and there are more aspects involved with it. So I looked more into this, and the biggest issue I have with Gausman is that his 4-seamer location is really bad. And it gets hit so hard. 37% hard contact against lefties, 40% against righties. And for having a splitter that is, I think, the best splitter in baseball now that Tanaka is gone, and it's so consistent, surprisingly, which is so weird for me to say for a
yes,
splitter.
You hate splitters.
I do. There are always exceptions. It's one of my mantras in life, is that there are always exceptions.
That's how I got on the show today,
Absolutely not, Joe. So that's such a good splitter, and I feel like I can rely on that, but it's because that 4-seamer setting it up, right? And that 4-seamer is getting demolished a lot more than I think it should. I do wonder, is Gausman going to be able to change that location of it moving forward? Also, I will say the Giants defense was excellent in 2022 to help Gausman maybe hide it a little bit. But then it got exposed a little bit more, I think, with the Blue Jays. That said, sure, what was it? 124 whip last year for Gausman. He still had a 3.3 ERA, still put up a strikeout an inning, right? And a lot of those for you couldn't get wins. So he's still productive for you, and it should be better than a 124 whip. But then I look at Alek Manoah, and Alek Manoah to me, he's so there. I mean, I'm actually tempted to put on the site a tick box that says, does he have that dog in him? And I'm going to say yes or no for guys just on the player page. And Alek Manoah has that. We know this. Over 190 innings last year.
Ask the Yankees. They know.
4-seamer was excellent. Near 20% swing strike rate against righties last year on that 4-seamer is great. The sinker is the big issue as far as sustainability, where he located that poorly. He needs to get that more inside. He actually talked about it in August, saying that his sinker wasn't as good as it used to be. PLV hates his sinker. It actually was one of the things that when we were initially doing the modeling, I was like, you can't be this negative on Alek Manoah's sinker. Please fix this. Obviously, not what we actually did.
Back into the
yeah, right. Get my opinion into this. You all know pitch quantifiers that take the eye test, how we don't trust those. So don't worry, we didn't do anything. But it is a problem where he does just put it in the zone too often. The good news is I think there are adjustments to be made. I think he acknowledges this. And he knows that he actually had games where he fixed it and tweaked it, and it was much, much better. And that slider, I think that slider can be better than it is. It should be, I think, more of an 18%, 20% swing strike rate consistently. Amazing movement on it. We generally like this one. And I think that 4-seamer is just so good. I think the slider can be better. I think the sinker can improve. And we're talking about a guy who had a phenomenal ERA, phenomenal whip last year, where that 23% K rate can go up for him. As a young guy, too, I love this. I love when we have guys who've gone for a season and a second one and are still young and can develop further.
Mhm.
You know, it's not like they're done now. It's not like, oh, this is who he is and he's going to get worse. I think Alek Manoah gets better. So I'm a fan of Alek
Gossman's
Manoah
never
this
going to have a
year.
good slider. We can give up on that.
Oh gosh, the CSW is high, but
But to
CSW
Eno's
is
point,
weird.
Nick, we've kind of, and I think this is where he's alluding to what he's saying is we've seen the best of Gossman, and the
Yeah.
best of Gossman is sort of close to Alek Manoah. I don't know if we've seen the best of Alek Manoah. That feels like what Nick's talking about. When you're talking about these two players here, again,
Well, yeah,
teammates
force
back to
Nick
back.
into a decision here. Come on, that was a
Well,
lot
I
of
feel like
talk.
he made it.
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
going to
wasn't
Alek
it Manoah?
I'm going to Alek
Yeah,
Manoah. Don't worry.
I think
You don't need
you
to
know,
force me. I'm an Alek Manoah boy.
All right. Well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be I'm the king of waffles on my show, but this one is not close for me at all. It's
All right.
I've got Gossman by 12 points in the ranks over Manoah. I've got my model likes Gossman so much more than Manoah. 115 stuff plus for Gossman, 103 for Manoah. It's the projections like Gossman by $2. The bat has it by $2 for Gossman over Manoah. Steamer has it even worse, I think. There's nothing that I can really hang my hat on stuff wise. The sinker is a 95 stuff plus. It's a poor sinker by my model. I do like the dog in a bit. I like the upside. You were making me, there was a little bit of waffling going on. And you're right about Gossman's four-seamer. What it is it has enough ride, but when it has plus ride, he gets it above the bats and it's higher in the zone. But if you've been listening to Alex Chamberlain's presentation, you know that high in the zone needs to be high in the zone and not high in the zone. I mean, it's like almost be above the zone, not high in the zone, because high in the zone is homers, above the zone is pop-up. So there's a real thin line there, and Gossman does live on a thin line there. He could have high BABIPs, could have high homer totals. He had those last year, and he was excellent. So I actually don't think it could get worse. And then lastly, the shift rules are going to prioritize swinging strikes, strikeouts. It's going to be more important this year to put to
That's
get
a
the
great
strikeout.
point too. Let's talk about that.
That's a really good point.
How much
balls in play are going to be rewarded more now?
In your opinion, guys, are there pitchers that really stood out to you that you think are going to, let's say, be hurt by the lack of the shift this year?
All the Tobies.
Who are those guys?
Don't draft Tobies.
That's a good
who are
one.
those?
That's a good one.
Who was
I have
it,
a
Nick?
real
I'm sorry, I
name.
didn't hear it.
The
Oh no, I
Tobies.
didn't give a name. Just all the middling ones.
Yeah,
Are
Oh, the Tobies.
Noob got
Okay,
it.
good.
Noob got it.
There you
Noob
go.
got
Tony
it.
Gonsolin.
Yeah, Tony
TPH Noob
Gonsolin.
got it. Tony Gonsolin. Number one
some of those guys too.
beneficiary of the shift last year. Number one.
Not a shock.
I do think that Dodgers have a really good defensive model. They've had the best BABIP in the history of baseball. Like going back, you can go back any amount of years. They had the best BABIP, and last year they had a 250 BABIP as a team. So
Oh my gosh,
they're amazing when it comes to defense, and I think they will continue to be pretty amazing. But the rules are going to hamper them, and so I think Gonsolin is going to get hurt by this most.
All right, so let's get to some more names here. The guys can debate. Actually, you said Manoah. And then, Sarah said Kevin Gausman. Clearly, I mean, he was basically saying it's not close, even though ADP thinks it's close, and Nick and I think it's close. I feel like I'm kind of going against the wave here. I mean, Eno was so strong. He's already telling me I feel like I'm wrong for going with Alek Manoah, but I feel like there's a gear there we haven't seen, and maybe he could fix some of those other things. So I'm going to go with Alek Manoah there. I like both of them, but this is that range too, guys, that I feel like. This is why in many of my drafts, I've been running a bunch of mock drafts already over on the Fantasy Pro software and the Draft Wizard. Whenever I wait and I look for this tier of pitcher, I like my team so much more than the early pitchers. Have you found that to be a trend too? Like the early pitchers, it's really hard to get the offense you want.
I mean, 12 teamers for me, it's like, 5 through 8 rounds. Those are the ones I go for. I can even get ones I still love, like Luis Castillo. I'm like, all right, this is the greatest thing ever. This is what it was last year. I was saying Alek Manoah, Kevin Gausman, Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish.
Oh, Joe Musgrove was like the hero of our show.
Justin Verlander. Like that was
our FP
what
show.
You did,
Welsh and I, all we did was talk about Joe Musgrove and a couple other guys. We're like, we all just want to draft these guys. We're going to let the other guys go. Because if you can find the guys who can
early on.
Right. I mean, because the hitters, especially in the outfield, it's sparse out there. Let's talk about two guys trending upward. They're relatively close in ADP, not quite back to back. Christian Javier of the Houston Astros. He is going as the 64th overall player. Tristan McKenzie is the 74th. They're the 22nd and 26th pitcher overall. I want to talk about them because these are two young guys trending upward. I know a couple years ago, my pal Craig Mish, who we did a lot of radio and TV together over the years, he texted me, he said, I just saw this kid, Christian Javier, throw. He's the best thing I've seen here this entire time that I've been here. And I immediately went to go find him in every league and add him wherever I could, early to dynasty and spots like that. Ever since I've been enamored of this kid, and last year he started to show you exactly what you thought he could be. And it's not surprising. This is another guy that has a great investment in his ADP last year because you knew he was going to get an opportunity at starts again. He got them. It was great. Tristan McKenzie kind of battled around his first year. Last year, huge stride. So the first 120 innings that he threw over in 2021, obviously the ERA was close to 5 last year. That ERA dropped from 4.95 to 2.96, a huge difference here for the Cleveland Guardians. He had 190 strikeouts and 191 innings. Let's go first with you on this one, Eno. Tristan McKenzie, Christian Javier, two guys who are certainly trending upwards. Do you have a preference between these two guys? And they are 10 spots away from each other overall ADP. So you could say I'd rather wait for McKenzie as opposed to going with Javier. But I'm curious, where do you land with these two guys who are kind of on the uptick right now in drafts?
Pretty strongly Christian Javier. I'm like all over that. I have like a 20 rank difference between them.
I think it's 20 for me. It might even be a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even see him. I Javier 17 and he's down there somewhere.
15 and 37 for me, if I remember correctly.
One thing that I do think this does fit hand in glove with what you guys were talking about in terms of the shape of the pitching this year. If I waited and came with 2 top end number 2s or 2 like back end number 1, top end number 2, like 2 guys out of there, I would love it. Like a Javier Luis Castillo pairing is possible by ADP. And I'd feel pretty sexy because I would have had like 3 or 4 hitters before that, maybe a closer even before so like, there's a lot to do there. You could, Pyrell is right in the chat. You could pair them because there's so much ADP difference. I don't want to speak ill of McKenzie. He has an elite curveball, I think, or a near elite curveball, and he's found a good way to pair. He came back one time. He went to the minor leagues and he came back with more velo, except he had no command anymore because he was just throwing as hard as he could. And I think he's found an okay mix of effort and aggression and velo and command. And so I think he's a pretty good pitcher. But Javier is like Strider light, where like he's got like 2 elite pitches in the fastball and slider. And his curveball is actually better than any third pitch Strider throws. So it's not quite the same thing, but it's similar. It's like a 5-inning closer with Javier out there.
I feel like Javier is going to be my early long shot, quote unquote, when the odds come out for Cy Young, because I know those numbers are going to be big when we start. And by the time I think we get to June, it's going to be a very different picture. I think Javier's last year, Justin Verlander started on that board at 25-1. He's going to get W's. He's going to get run support. He's going to get defensive support there from Houston. So obviously both of you feel there's a big enough gap between this, not even a conversation. So Nick Pollock, let's turn it around here to somebody who is literally right next to Christian Javier. And that is Zach Gallen, who is another pitcher that I know.
Yeah, that's a better.
All the stat nerds love the Zach Gallen. Can't get enough of the Zach Gallen.
I mean, come on, I'm a Gallen gal.
I know you figured you were. So let's bump it up. Let's raise the stakes here. Are you going to go with Gallen, or are you going to go
2019 interview I had with him that it was lost in the record.
Oh no, the record button didn't work or something.
Oh, it was only me and not him, and it's the funniest thing ever. It's me going, no. Oh yeah. And it was like
ironically, it's the best interview Nick's ever done.
It was such a good. I remember being so jazzed. I jumped and like I pumped my fist after it, and I went back to listen to it, and I was crushed.
But I did an interview all in German with Max Kepler, and it was all in German, and I was so proud of myself. And I looked down and hadn't been recording.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Yep. Oh, that's so cool though. But yeah, I mean, really quickly on Tristan McKenzie, I think there's consistency that needs to come more. He doesn't get enough strikes, I think, with that curveball, even though it is beautiful and gets tons of whiffs and everything like that. It's a sub 60% strike rate, and he can't rely on that, which means that the 4-seamer has to do too much. And the 4-seamer, I don't think, is as good as it was, as the results were. I think that's actually a really susceptible thing. Obviously, we know with Cleveland being Cleveland, that's a typical thing, right? You have good breaking balls and then a bad fastball, but the slider is still also inconsistent too. You cannot rely on that thing. At least he'll go long. And that's actually one positive for McKenzie, is that he should be able to go 6 innings consistently for the Guardians. And Javier does struggle with walks still. I mean, he's just really leaning into like, I don't allow home runs at the top of the zone. I just get pop-ups above it and just going heavily into that. So hopefully there is something that gets improved on his slider that's more of a 65% strike rate. And if he can get that going, that can really limit those walks and make it so that he can go 6 innings. I generally believe that if you are four-seamer focused, you can go 6 innings more consistently than guys that are breaking ball focused. And that's a good thing for Javier. I think also the Astros are going to let loose a little bit more this year. About 145 innings last year for Christian Javier. They're just going to say every 5 days, not even a 6-man rotation, I don't think, in Houston now. So that would allow Javier to hopefully get above the 180 this year, which then closes that gap as well. Him versus Zach Gallen. Gallen is, guys, I love Zach Gallen. I feel weird about it because the four-seamer it's a called strike pitch. It's actually one of the lowest swing strike rate four-seamers amongst qualified starting pitchers last year. And he's so reliant on this mix of curveballs and changeups down and a cutter as well. I think his best skill, I mean, outside of the called strike rate of that four-seamer, are that both his changeup and curveball are down. They do not hang. They are not these like floating ones top of the zone at all. I think I'm trying to go by memory here. 80% low location on the curveball is insane. You see like 60% league average. And he does the same thing with the changeup, way above average on, I think like 70%, 75%. And doing that means that you are not going to allow as many hits and earned runs as much. Just keeping it down and out of the zone where you should be having the secondaries is great. The cutter hasn't taken the step forward that I wanted it to be like a real like slider that misses a ton of bats with massive consistency. But it's an overall package that works. And then when you add in the fact that the Arizona Diamondbacks were the 2022, I think, top defense in the majors, something crazy like that. I wish someone would tell me before the start of the season who the top defense is going to be, because it will help a lot for a ton of these things. So I do wonder if that is going to stick again, because we had that impression of the Giants the year before, and that wasn't going to stick around. I don't know if I feel so confident in Arizona doing it again, also with the shift rules changing. So I think that helped Gallen a bit as well. I'm conflicted. I'm going to go Christian Javier, though, because I just think he's just too good at striking guys out, and he could get better. And you still have
you were supposed to do
the Astros.
You're supposed to do Gallen versus McKenzie.
Well, no. We were supposed to do Gallen versus Javier.
Definitely not McKenzie. McKenzie, get out of here. I'm not drafting you anyway.
McKenzie, we've taken out. So I'll go back to you now, Eno.
Probably not ending with a lot of McKenzie.
Is Gallen is Javier somebody that's still Javier over Gallen for you as well, since they are a little bit closer in ADP?
It is much closer for me, but I still have where's my Gallen? Oh, there he is. It's actually
I hate when I lose my Gallen. It's the worst.
Two ranks. So I have Javier 17, Gallen 19.
Yeah,
so I have it very close. What I like about Gallen is he reminds me of sort of like a baby Woodruff, where he's got 4 pitches, he's got command, and Stuff says 3 of the 4 pitches are great. Woodruff is like 4 pitches are great by Stuff, and 4 pitches are great by location. There's very few people that do that, by the way. That have stuff and location, and that's what Gallen does. I do think there's a little bit of softness to the 4-seam Stuff Plus. I don't know why I say that. It's sort of that's a feel thing. It's just I don't know. I feel like it could drop out of being good Stuff Plus. I'm a little surprised every time I look at it. You know, it's the 114 Stuff Plus on the 4-seam. Like that's way higher than I would have expected. Every time I look at it, I'm like, really? But I do like Gallen, so I have him. If you did something in a deeper league where you just came out with Javier and Gallen, like that might be an okay beginning to a roster too, I think.
Yeah, we have the four-seamer PLV pretty much being average for Gallen, just overall. I mean, I know you're talking about Stuff Plus. We incorporate location inside of it, but yeah, it feels like that
you don't have
is
to justify your work.
thing.
It's very good. Everybody knows how good you are. It's okay.
The only reason I separate
to make
stuff
things
and
up here.
location is because stuff is stickier year to year,
Right.
and stuff comes online faster. Location takes a little bit longer to be reliable. So it's like if you're looking at a really, really small sample, stuff is good.
It's great to see Paul Sporer in the chat insulting me too. I love that. It's great to see your friends here. It's always fun to get. All right, let's get to another pair here. Also teammates, also back to back. I want to get your take on these guys, redraft and beyond too. Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, two guys in the Mariners system. The Mariners certainly have put together quite a formidable rotation here in the last 2 years via trade, via free agent signing, and via their own system. They are going back to back right now. Number 95 overall is Logan Gilbert, 98 is Kirby, pitcher 31 is Gilbert, pitcher 32 is Kirby. Let's start with you on this one, Nick. For redraft in 2022, Gilbert or Kirby, and then long term, who do you think is the guy that you'd rather have in, let's say, a dynasty situation or a keeper league?
It's kind of funny because last year I called them Jerby.
Mid one man,
same guy, you know.
Well,
but
they
actually,
are pretty close.
They're very different now.
You're prepared to be a dad, by the way.
Yeah, I have been since 14. No,
You got the jokes all ready to go.
but no, I actually think of them very differently now. Originally the idea was, oh, cool, you have a really good four-seamer, and then we don't know what the secondary stuff's going to be. We trust you to go along with the Mariners, all that kind of stuff. Thing is, George Kirby's four-seamer is way better to me than Logan Gilbert's. Misses a whole lot more bats. I think he just has overall better command of it too. And then you throw in the fact that George Kirby's slider, like stuff-wise, I think is great. And that can be so much better. I was looking at a lot of strike zone plots of it just to kind of understand why isn't he doing more from this. He's really good against lefties with a slider. Don't only throws it 15% of the time, just kind of like what it is with Luis Castillo. I'm like, please just throw lefties back foot. And this is something across the board. I think right-handing pitchers. I put out a whole what I want to see for 2023 in baseball, like right at the turn of the new year. And one of the major things is, please, right-handers, throw sliders down and into lefties. Just try to do that more often, because so many times we see that as being so successful. And Jacob deGrom understands it, and he does it like all the time, and it's the greatest thing ever. George Kirby could really soar with what he has right now. And I thought of it initially as, oh, Kirby needs to add something. He needs to change what he has. I'm like, no. You actually have a good enough slider to make that work, both against lefties and righties. So that innately right there has me ahead with Kirby, and maybe Kirby ahead of Gilbert.
And
maybe
that's
the
2023 you're talking right now.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And beyond. Forward. Okay.
Oh yeah, and beyond as well. With Gilbert, he did adjust the breaking ball later on in the year last year. And it maybe was better, maybe it wasn't. I remember actually this time last year we were so excited because he said new changeup, new slider. I'm like, yes, good. We need that. And no, it wasn't really that amazing, but low 3 ERA with a 118 whip. It wasn't like it was bad having Gilbert, and maybe he could develop and be good as well. So I'm not necessarily against either one or against Gilbert's progression, but I really like Kirby. I think he has such a good opportunity to be great moving forward, while Gilbert, I don't have as much faith.
It's funny because I think the consensus out there for the fantasy baseball public is they see both these guys, they're right back to back, and they figure, oh, okay, well, I just get one of them, it's the same. And it might not be the case here from what Nick's selling. I want to get your take on this. Before we do, I see Paul Sporer has created a new statistic in which to gauge some of these guys called DHAR, which stands for dog in him above replacement. So you got to check the DHAR now. I expect that to be added to Fangraphs and pitcher lists and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So, let's talk about Gilbert and Kirby. I mean, two guys either back to back in ADP. There it is. I mean, what's better than that? You've got a situation where I think people feel like, either of these is fine. They're both going to be on the board at the same time. But let's say you've got a chance and they are both on the board. Is there one that you prefer greatly in 2023 and potentially has more value for your long term?
I like them both. They have like plus makeup. I think they both they say they idealize certain things, and they're like, I'm going to do this, and they mostly do it. Gilbert wanted to throw Justin Verlander's slider, and it started to look a little bit like Justin Verlander's slider. George Kirby said, he added 4 inches of drop to his slider mid-season, and then he said, I want to throw this 90 miles an hour. And by the end of the season, he'd added 2 miles an hour to that new slider that he had. So, I mean, it wasn't 90, it was 87, but like, you get my point. Like they visualize things they want to do, and a lot of times they do it. They're both kind of savanty in that way. Kirby's way more scores higher on the savant bit, though. Like he's really precise about what he wants, and I think he's got more adjustability. He's got more pitches. So what you've got is, in a way, like Gilbert's going to get closer to like a Javier, type. If he keeps getting better, he'll be more of a 2-pitch guy. I don't believe in that changeup. I don't think he keeps telling me it's going to work, but I don't believe him. And Kirby, on the other hand, is a guy who has a lot of pitches, whose fastballs I think it's not as good as Gilbert's. I think Gilbert's fastball is better. And so there is a little question though, of like who you think will age better. I'll take Kirby more years out of not, because it's a higher floor. He has good, really elite command, and elite slider command is such a good place to start in this league. I'm going to take that elite slider command plus a developing slider by stuff. I'm going to take Kirby. But long term, would you take the guy with the better fastball? And I think Gilbert does have the better fastball. So what if he then develops this, elite second piece, and and then he's a little bit more likely to be like a Javier. Who in the top 10 would Kirby become is my question, because I don't think he has the fastball stuff. Plus, the closest I can think of is like an Aaron Nola, where like it's up and down. Sometimes he's in the top 10, sometimes he's just outside.
So I'm kind of with you there. The only thing is, I think it was a 16% swing strike rate across the entire year with the 4-seamer for Kirby, which is just like,
I think it's based on location though,
but that's fine. I mean, that's a skill. And to have that is like, wait, hold on a second. Because you don't see that often from an overall 4-seamer. It's like incredibly rare. And so that gets me more excited about the foundation. I think of it as Woodruff for Kirby. That's what I see. And you have that really good
excellent fastball by Stuff Plus. Like it's a much better fastball, I think. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well, these are good problems for the Mariners to have, worrying about who's better when you think about it.
It's kind of cool that they're so different. I think they're pretty different.
It's cool that they're so different, and it's cool that neither of them have the burden of being the guy yet either, because you've got Castillo, you've got Robbie Ray in that rotation. I think that's so important. You've seen other organizations. Well, look, you've got guys in that rotation that are veterans. You've got whatever the shortcomings might be.
Gonna do it again and make us look like idiots, Nick.
Oh, I would love that. I love looking like an idiot when they do well.
Let me tell you something. Robbie Ray, back-to-back years, almost 190 innings, over 200 strikeouts. I know the ERA from 2.84 to 3.71, but 3.71 is that's fine
pretty good
in modern day baseball. I think we'll take that. But I think it's really important, and I think it's underappreciated that when you have guys coming up in your system and you have these young pitchers, that they don't have the burden of carrying rotations. It's one of those things that burdened Max Scherzer when he was young with the Arizona Diamondbacks, I think. And when he went to Detroit, not having to be that guy, you saw him kind of blossom into the Max Scherzer he became, and Verlander was that guy. And it's funny because then Verlander went to Houston and was that same guy for Garrett Cole. So it's nice when you're a young pitcher to not have the burden of carrying the rotation, and neither of these two guys have that, which is great because you can just kind of let them be themselves, develop over time, and not feel that pressure of, every start's got to be perfect. Every start's got to be, 7 innings in perfection and 1 run. And, that's unrealistic for a young pitcher at this point. Let's talk about two guys who are different points in their careers, both lefties. They're going back to back, though, ironically, right now in ADP. Pitcher number 37 on the board is Blake Snell of the San Diego Padres. Bro, it's me, Blake Snell, bro. And of course, it's Nick Lodolo at pitcher number 38, 120 overall and 124 overall. Lodolo certainly righted the ship after a rocky start. He has been a big-time pitching prospect for a few years now. Cincinnati probably not going anywhere. The Padres, on the other hand, have huge aspirations of a huge team. Two pitchers at very different points in their careers. It's kind of like the devil we know and the devil we don't. Between these two pitchers both on the board, who's your preference in 2023 in drafts? Would you want to go for the rookie, or should I say the second-year pitcher here with Nick Lodolo, who's still kind of learning on the job, has some deficits in terms of the work on the road wasn't good, ironically, last year. You look at Nick Lodolo as a guy, too. Okay, what's the innings? Where are we at? And then there's Blake Snell, who could be great, or he could be Blake Snell. These are the things that we have sometimes happen with Blake Snell for long stretches at a time. So over his career, he has been a very tough pitcher to kind of lock down. Who would you rather have, Snell or Lodolo?
I'm gonna take Snell. I think ever since he turfed the changeup, which he can't command, he's been a much better pitcher. He's mostly he's Javier-esque in that he's kind of like this closer for 5 innings, 2-pitch guy, but he does have the curve if he needs it. The thing is, you were saying, does Lodolo have the innings? Does Snell have the innings?
That's also fair.
It's a little bit rough for to expect. I don't know what
1 year with 180 for the mark,
there.
by the way, in case people are wondering out there, and then average the rest of the time somewhere around about 128. So that is a fair assessment, a fair.
But Lodolo's had major injuries and may be a candidate for operation shutdown by the team. Even if he gets to a good number, like definitely the high end on the innings is more likely for Snell, because you're not going to baby Snell. You're not going to stop him from pitching. You might actually stop Lodolo from pitching. Lodolo, though, is a guy that my model loves for stuff. It actually thinks that Snell has better command, which, if you think back on the history of Snell, might surprise you. So I think Lodolo has a little bit of risk when it comes to the command, as well as the innings. So that's enough for me to have them fairly far apart. But I did just move Snell down a little bit because I was like, man, if Lodolo's down there. So I got Snell back in top 25.
All right. Nick, how about for you? You got Lodolo, you got Snell. Perhaps they're a lot closer in innings this year. If either of them gets to 130, I guess we'll all just, shout hooray. But at this point, they're going back to back, which means the market right now is valuing them the same. The question is, how do you value them?
Well, it's really funny. I'm right now I'm so distracted because you said Blake Snell 25. I'm thinking, like, who do you have ahead of or below Blake Snell? Now it's so hard. Because I love Blake Snell. I'm actually like, I'm saying, yeah, I'm in on this. I've been.
Do I have Lodolo too low at 35? I thought I was pushing Lodolo at 35.
I have 38 in the consensus, so that's pretty close to the consensus out there.
It gets really difficult to manage between guys like Logan Webb, Framber Valdez, who are more
in between the two.
Right. Well, right. Exactly. Yeah. It's like you have this crew. You also have Chris Bassett in there, I think, too. Yeah. We just talked about Logan Gilbert in there. You have these larger volume, but not necessarily like a top 10 ceiling kind of guys, like especially K- walk rates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, but I want to have that volume in there.
I need to have some innings too. Yeah.
Right. And then you have things like Lodolo, which I think is more of a volatile. Like, is he going to put that together with its sinker breaking ball right now? I actually think the changeup hopefully comes better. I know it didn't grade too well last year, but seeing some of it and seeing how he mixes it in, I think there is potential there, especially in the second year, for that to develop. Pitching for the Reds isn't good. Bad for wins. Bad for Park. He made some great points about the injury history of Lodolo still being a thing that we need to be aware of. And yeah, I don't know if he can have the Andrew Heaney sinker work, right? As well as we want it to. There's still some command stuff I think that needs to be ironed out with it. I really like Lodolo. I think the potential is phenomenal here. But is this year I'm going to take the chance on it? And with Snell, I mean, the slider grades incredibly well for us. I imagine it does for you too. As one of like the better sliders really out there. Four-seamer throwing a ton in the zone, I think, was a good adjustment he made in 2021, and it carried on in 2022.
He likes his four-seam better than his sinker, which is
is that right?
Because he throws his sinker more, but
sinker?
He likes his four-seam better than his sinker
for Lodolo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
no, I'm talking sinker about more.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Snell.
The off of sinker and four-seamer, I went down this rabbit hole was fast. It's like I don't even.
Yeah.
We have it more like 8-10% that he throws up and in, because he throws that up and in to righties, Lodolo, when he does that. And he has a quote talking about it too a little bit, which I think could be really good. And that's actually a skill that I look for in a lot of guys. Can you throw four-seamers up and into the opposite handedness? I see that as an amazing sign of command, and that is one of the more successful things you can do. But with Snell, yeah, I'll go back on his Twitch stream and tell him, hey, no changeups, right? We good?
Bro, I'll throw changeups if a while.
And that's what he said last year. And it drove me
I love my changeup.
Tell me how to be. His first 5 games, he has multiple double-digit changeups. He has double-digit changeups, and then everything goes away. After that, it was sub 4% changeups, and he was phenomenal. I mean, we're talking like way sub 3 ERA, much better whip. strikeout rates, I think he's in the top 5 of K per 9, I think, or top 4. Only one's above 11, I think, for Steamer. Something along those lines. And yeah, he's going to get so many strikeouts, winning ball club with the Padres. I know the health is a thing, but also it was about a month delay last year, and then he pitched through the end. So yeah, I'm going to go after Blake Snell. This could be like the year where he doesn't have a 120 whip, thankfully. As long as he just throws 4-seamers in the middle of the plate and breaking balls a ton, that can work. Just also like that curveball, he just bounces it too much, and it's just so annoying. Like,
That's
just be a
fair.
little more efficient with that curveball, and you'll be fine.
I think both have enormous risk in them. I'd probably lean towards Snell too, just because I just think that team is going to be a much, much better team. Obviously, San Diego's really kind of pushed their chips all in the offseason and even last season too. Let's go with two guys who have certainly upside, certainly moments. These are two players that goodness knows I've had shares of over the years. And last year I had a lot of shares of John Gray because I thought just getting out of Colorado would be a good idea. And if you give him enough time, you might see the pitcher that everybody was so excited about coming out of college. And then Lance McCullers, who has certainly dazzled us at times. We've seen him flash big strikeout numbers. Last year, 47 innings for him over the 8 games coming back from the surgery. 2.27 ERA. John Gray, again, had a few different injuries during that year, which was a shame too, because at one point, one of those injuries, it was on a stretch where he was really rolling and starting to look really good. So these guys are going very close in ADP. 180 overall, 188 for John Gray, 180 for Lance McCullers. Nick, these two guys are on the board. You want to take a flyer on one. Who's it going to be?
Oh, boy. It depends.
Well, they can't all be Jacob DeGrom versus Shane McClanahan here.
Let me explain, Joe.
Oh, okay.
It depends on where I have to do this. Because like if I'm in a 12-teamer, I speak a lot to, hey, I want 4 guys that I'm not dropping the entire year that I can depend on, right? And generally that can't actually extend to 5 because I kind of like Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez, and I'm able to get that in the 12th or sometimes even 14th round in 12-teamer in mocks I've done, which is wonderful. So then if I'm later on saying, cool, I want to get a 6 that I'd take a flyer on between John Gray and Lance McCullers, well, it's 2 different things. Lance McCullers is just about volume. As long as he pitches, I think I'm cool with it. His slider is really, really good. Breaking ball, the curveball against lefties is good as well. Sinker needs to be fixed somehow. I don't know what's going on there. It just needs to be fixed. It's crazy. But how many innings am I going to get out of this, right? And if it's a true flyer, I think there are some really intriguing guys to go for as, like, say, like an SB6 or so that I don't know if I really want to do it with Lance McCullers as much. I think it might be just kind of a wasted pick as well, because I really do not trust that elbow. John Gray, I got really excited about last year. Increased velocity a bit. Slider was looking really good. He came back. He really had this season of injuries in the beginning that never allowed him to get into a rhythm. But once he did in the middle of the season, he looked like an ace. And he was really nailing everything and looking great. Slowed down a little bit by the end. In retrospect of the entire season, John Gray's 4-seamer isn't as good as I thought it was, even with the increased velocity. And that is giving me a little bit of pause. I think the slider is still really good. He's still kind of 2-pitch with this. And I'm not depending on him as much as I wanted to. If I had to decide between the two, I think it's John Gray, because I think John Gray more realistically can make an impact for the entire year as opposed to Lance McCullers. I don't trust the health. That's as simple as that.
Sure.
But John Gray, I'm not actually chasing. So I'm not really going for either one of these at this point. If I can wait past definitively my SP5 for either one, sure, it's not so bad. I'll take a chance on it. But I guess I'll go with John Gray over Lance McCullers for the entirety of 2023.
All right, your pick here. You've got these two guys on the board, Lance McCullers and John Gray, in NFBC terms. They are very close as well. They're going back to back there in ADP also. So it's not just a consensus where they're close. They are the 2 pitchers back to back where the big money is too. So if you're going to take a risk on somebody, let's say there's a run on pitching and now you kind of had your hand forced here, you got to take some upside. Who's that guy for you in 23?
I've got a couple of guys that I might take that are going after them. I might take over them, but I have them right next to each other. So I think it's a tough one to parse. Shout out to Jeff Zimmerman, who has injury percentiles, and he's put together injury risk percentiles for pitchers. And I was heartened to hear Nick say that both of these guys are kind of injury risk, because If you look at it, Lance McCullers 95th
Yeah.
percentile injury risk. That's not surprising. Everyone knows that. But John Gray, 85th percentile injury risk. So, that's two guys where I think you might as well chase the upside. I might surprise people by thinking that John Gray may have more upside. He added a sweeper last year, and that's what Lance McCullers did. But John Gray has more natural command than Lance McCullers. So Lance McCullers is a double risk, injury and command, whereas John Gray is more of an injury risk. I think that John Gray is actually throwing both sliders right now. I think he's throwing the sweeper and the old slider. And so that could make him a 3-pitch pitcher, where he'd be a weird 2-slider, 1 fastball guy. Yeah. I think it's a good park he's in. It's close, man. But I'll take John Gray by a hair.
I would take John Gray as well. It feels like a 2.5 pitch pitcher might be the thing there.
Right,
let's do one more here before we move on for the next hour and whoever is slated next to come on and chat baseball with you. And if you haven't already, make sure you go make your donations, please. Obviously Nick's got all the information out there. Go donate to the fundraiser here for PitchCon for ALS. And while we're looking at two guys here, same town, different league, Justin Steele, Chicago Cubs, right now going NFBC 283, Michael Kopech 287. Both guys certainly have some flashes there, some things that get you pretty excited in the fantasy baseball community, but not complete in terms of where they are in their pitching career. We haven't even got to a point yet with either of these guys where we know exactly who they are or they know who they are as pitchers. But we've seen guys take leaps forward. We've seen guys really come into their own. Kopech certainly had an enormous amount of hype around him. We could say he hasn't lived up to it yet. And Steele is a guy that I think hasn't had much hype around him at all by comparison. And yet last year was the more useful entity. So let's go with you here first on this one. Eno, your thoughts here, Justin Steele or Michael Kopech? We're getting deeper into the pitching now. Who would you rather have in 23?
Fans of my podcast have been asking me, why do you hate Justin Steele? So I think that answers your question right there. The reason, and I don't hate him as a person, and I think he's way better at throwing baseballs than I am. And let me just throw that out there. But I do not like him as a fantasy pitcher because I think he's a 1-pitch pitcher. I think he's got a slider, and that's it. Michael Kopech has a fastball and a slider and a bad knee and some of the worst command in the majors. So it's not like he's without his warts. But I go back to this idea that command is not a sticky year to year. So I say, he cleans up the knee, he feels better on the knee, he repeats his mechanics better, and just a little bit of command will go a long way with him because he does have the stuff. And so I'm gonna, and especially I think where those pitchers go. Most likely, maybe the deeper leagues, I'd steal more innings, whatever. But most likely where they go, I'm going chasing upside. I'm going to take the guy who has good stuff on 2 or 3 pitches versus the guy who has basically 1 pitch in my estimation.
All right, Nick, your thoughts here, Kopech or Steele? Again, these are later round pitchers, deeper leagues we're talking about. So who do you feel more comfortable with at rostering in 2023?
Well, it's pretty funny because Michael Kopech is a steal.
Nice. Wow.
He is though.
We have twins.
As you mentioned,
how many kids can you have here with all the bad jokes?
You'll know. It's just there. It's not like I have a bag, It's just flowing like a faucet.
Yeah.
But no, all you need to know is that Michael Kopech, as long as he's throwing hard in spring, if he's throwing 97 or whatever, and that means the knee is fine, then great. It was so entertaining watching from afar all the hipsters, that is headache-inducing pitchers stifling the entire roster. That is Michael Kopech. On every single league, guys like, what do I do with Michael Kopech? Is he going to start this week? Is he not? They sit him for a bit. All of a sudden he throws 97, 98 on Sunday Night Baseball against the Yankees. He's fixed, and then he's back down to 95 in the next one. Is the knee okay? Is it not? Oh, boy. It was something else, and I just want to see him fine. Everything's okay. You are the number 5 starter for the White Sox. Go ahead. Michael Kopech. And if he's not, you get rid of him. You don't need to hold on to Michael Kopech. That's the good news. If it's not looking right, just drop him. He might have one good start and then it's not good again. Just move on. Now, Justin Steele. We always have to say that, guys. We got to make sure we do that.
It is a very 80s,
it's important.
Tonight on CBS, Justin Steele.
Exactly.
He's definitely
he's one of the American Gladiators. He needs to really lean into that fastball in some way to get like the double-digit whiffs that we saw sometimes. Like, I'm with you, that the slider is really good, and that's really the thing. But there were some days that all of a sudden he just had a fastball that missed a ton of bats, and that's really cool. And it's not dependable in the slightest. So I'm out on Justin Steele. But if he can do that, I mean, there are parts of me that think like, oh, is this an Eric Lauer light almost at times? Because like Lauer had a 23 whiff game with his four-seamer alone last year, and then the next one's like, oh, here's 4 whiffs. Here you go.
I see some people in the chat saying things like Jameson or Bello are better flyers than Kopech. Do you agree with that?
Jameson, not a good enough fastball. Yeah, I think you go for Kopech instead. Bayo, sinker isn't good enough.
They were saying Rowanzi earlier, and I would agree.
I saw as well.
I would have him above.
This is the problem I have, I think, with Rowanzi is that
it's
I
bad
think
command,
earlier with Kopech. Like you're not drafting best ball
because Rowanzi started with good fastball and ended with bad.
Right.
He dropped like 4 miles per hour.
By the end too, and it was like 97, 98 earlier on. But the problem there is, like, I think you're going to still deal with that volatility with Rowanzi, especially not on the Pirates, is not going to get you wins. I'm sorry to say that. So I feel like if you draft Rowanzi, you're stuck with him a bit. While with Kopech, you
could just let him go. Yeah, if he's throwing 93s out there, then just move on.
Yeah, but even if Rowanzi's throwing 96, 97, it's not necessarily going to be a good thing. And I might not want that. So, but yeah, with Kopech, right.
With 2 minutes left here, give everybody your early target pitcher that you absolutely love, that you keep getting everywhere in mocks or even some early drafts you're doing that you're like, I got to have this guy, the early pitcher and the late pitcher, Nick Pollock. Who are those guys?
Early ones it's Rodon Castillo and Christian.
I said early one.
I know. I'm just
telling you, you're pushing the envelope already.
Don't make me choose between my children. All right? Don't make me do this. It's funny. It used to be Bailey Ober until that move happened as my late one. Honestly, Kenta Maeda. Why not? Like, again, I'm thinking 12-teamers of take a chance on him. He's coming back from TJS. If he's looking good in the spring, you hold on to that. If you don't, you move on.
The late. Who was the early one again?
Can I? It was Rojavia Castillo.
Rojavia Castillo.
It was.
Very good.
But yeah,
I've got. We got to be quick, I guess. I'm gonna go. He got 3, so I get 2 early at least. I'm going Woodruff and Glasnow as my SP1s and 2s.
Glasnow, interesting. Woodruff, I knew you were gonna say. I had a good feeling about that one. Glasnow.
I'm a Woodruff Woody.
Sorry,
he's so much better at that than I am.
You have wood for Woodruff.
I have a Woody for Woodruff.
Can we get that on a RotoWare shirt?
No.
Can we get somebody to order that, please? Why? Real quick, 10 seconds. Why? Tell me why Glasnow. What's the pitch?
There's a TJ Honeymoon of about 400 innings that they found where you don't re-injure the tendon. So he's got a little bit of a TJ Honeymoon. I know he's had other injuries, so that doesn't solve everything that he has problems with. But I also think there's a big carrot for him, which is next year's free agency after next year. So I think he's going to try and put up innings these next couple of years. And the slider that he came up with was amazing. So he's like he breaks my stuff model a lot. So I'll bet on the stuff there and hope for like 120, 130 innings. He's the kind of guy who could do Kershaw and things in 130 innings. Late guy is Ryan Nelson. My model just really likes him. I know there's a little bit of risk that he's not the 5th starter there, but this model really likes him over Dre Jameson. And he's got this insane amount of ride on his 4-seam, pretty good slider, good command of all his pitches, and he doesn't cost anything. And I disagree. JJ
No, I'm with
whatever.
you. I'm actually, I made this
I have
switch.
I have Nelson above Jameson with like a bunch of hooks. Like
Yeah.
I don't
Man
even
of the
have them.
people, Eno Saris, JJ, whatever your name is. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not impressed by your analysis at all. This has been super fun, guys. Thanks for all the insight. Thanks for inviting me here, Nick. And again, if you haven't already, make sure you donate. Nick's already told you where to go. You can go to the site too, go to Pitcher List and figure it out, and go make your donation today. Doing great things. What are we up to? What's the number, Nick?
I
We
gotta
crossed 5
check.
Gs yet?
Are we up to
should.
5,000? Let's see. We are up to 4,870.
All right,
Secret
let's go.
Sauce, Pat, Dave, thank you so much for the recent donations. We're close. Let's make it 5,000 very shortly. But Eno and Joe, thank you guys so much for indulging me. I put this panel together, guys. I made this happen for myself.
Well, you have no one to blame but you. That's
someday, Nick, you and I will just have a show.
That sounds good to me. I would
thanks for cutting me out of that.
I got
I with you.
No. It's fine. It's fine. You know, Nick, I really enjoyed this last hour with you. With you specifically. Not so much that guy, but you. I've enjoyed you.
No, you make us laugh. You've been a really good host. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I need to disappear now and just go and understand that sentence that Eno just said to me. But Joe, really, guys, thank you so much for being a part of PitchCon. This was a fantastic panel here. Thank you so much for being here. Take care, guys. All